Welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. On this episode, I'm going through my Queen CD collections. This is going to be a pretty extensive one. A little note about when I got into Queen, it was in early '92. It was just before Bohemian Rhapsody appeared in the Wayne's World soundtrack. At least I didn't know about it. My good friend Chad, who you've seen on here before, we discovered Queen through a mutual friend of ours. His dad had a pretty extensive classic rock collection. I remember listening to A Night at the Opera on vinyl and not believing how many different styles of music were on it, just being blown away by that. So, and Bohemian Rhapsody very suddenly appeared on the radio everywhere. And even though I knew about Queen since I was 6 years old, when Another One Bites the Dust was new, it had just recently dawned on me why so many of my favorite bands loved Queen. And of course the Freddie Mercury tribute concert with Metallica, Extreme, and Def Leppard, and that kind of reinforced it too. So I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll check this band out. And check it out I did. The year, that '92, that was the year of Queen for me. I just got their whole collection, or as much as I could find. And because of that, because of when I got into Queen, primarily what I've got to show you here are the 1991 Hollywood Records reissues, although there are a few variations and some kind of cool, rare CDs. So we'll get started. First one is the first Queen album from 1973, and this is a Hollywood Records edition. It's a Canadian edition. And Hollywood Records at the time, since Hollywood was a Warner-owned company, it followed the 60,000 series, the Elektra series. I didn't realize that till a little while later. And all of these CDs that came out with this reissue series, it was exciting because it was the first time many of these had been readily available on CD in North America. On the other hand, there's a few variants of these that came out before that all of a sudden became non-existent. I talked about that in the cassette episode I did on Queen, if you want to check that out. That's an older one. But they do a pretty good job of reprinting what was inside the original vinyl albums. And something else that they did was show appropriate single covers from all over the world. And this particular CD reissue is one of the better ones because it contains the song Mad the Swine, which did not appear on the first Queen album. I think it might have been a B-side. Second one, early 1974, Queen 2, iconic cover if there ever was one. This 2 is a Hollywood issue, and this 2 is a Canadian issue. I like what they did with the CD here, that's kind of cool. And they all have this 20-year crest on them too. Because Queen formed in '71, so they came out in '91. All the reissues did. Some more single covers, and there's all the lyrics. This also contained an extra song that wasn't on the album, See What a Fool I've Been, which was the B-side of Seven Seas of Rye. It's here. Third one, also 1974, Sheer Heart Attack. This is a Hollywood issue. It's a US one. Very little difference. And again, you know, the photos that were inside of the album. Although this glass shattering thing, I'm not sure if that was, I'd have to dig the record out. I don't know if that was on there or not, but single covers from throughout the world. And it's interesting, there's some wild cover art that some of these territories did. Next one is the Queen CD. I've had the longest, of course. It's where I started, which is A Night at the Opera. And mine is a Canadian Hollywood issue. I remember I've looked through these credits so many times and listened to this album. It's still one of my favorites, of course. And just thinking, I remember thinking at the time how cool it would be to get a bunch of this on vinyl. I was a long way from doing that. I didn't really get my vinyl collection started in earnest till about '93. And I thought just all these pictures were so cool. The whole layout, the way that it has this up here in that corner and that down in that corner. And loving the album. Next one is the first non-Hollywood one I have to show you, which is kind of interesting. I did buy it in Canada. So Queen were on EMI records all over the world from the beginning of their career, pretty much all the way till I think they re-signed and Virgin put out their entire catalog. or Universal, Virgin, whatever. But for most of their active years, all of their active years, they were on EMI, except for the territories where they were on Elektra. And I get into that on the cassette episode too, because I actually have those issues to show you. This is an EMI issue from the UK of A Day at the Races from 1976. Front cover doesn't look any different. You look on the side, it's very different. I had the choice to buy this or the Hollywood issue, and I chose this because they were both in the rack at the same time. I'm guessing at the time somebody must have ordered this and not picked it up, so I got it. I don't know that, but I just thought it was cool to have a different looking one. I'm glad I did, because there's something inside of this CD that is very unique. So those are photos and credits from the original album. So here's where it starts to get interesting. So you see where it changes from black to white. So on the black side, it's got Tie Your Mother Down, You Take My Breath Away, beginning of Long Away. Then it's got I'm in Love with My Car and You're My Best Friend. You turn the page. 39, Sweet Lady, Seaside Rendezvous. It's got half of A Night at the Opera's credits in here. And again, there's the Prophet song, and then it's back to Good Old Fashioned Loverboy. So half the lyrics on here I don't have, except for on the vinyl, and then it ends correctly. So I don't know if this was, all of them were made like this. Does anybody out there know? Anybody that has the EMI, the old EMI version of A Day at the Races with the serial number 46208, does your CD booklet have half of A Night at the Opera in the credits? I'd really like to know if anybody out there knows about this. Conversely, is there a Night at the Opera one that has half of A Day at the Races? It was obviously a printing error. They didn't mean to do this. So moving on, 1977. Another one of my favorite Queen albums, News of the World. This is a Canadian Hollywood issue. What's interesting about this one is that this album, The Game, and Greatest Hits were all issued in North America, in the States anyway, and I'm sure Canadian, could get them as an import, on Elektra. And those CDs are some of the rarest Queen CDs. And this is the earliest one that you can get on Elektra. I'd love to get my hands on one of those, but I digress. It's a good album to get your hands on regardless of how you do it. Thought the artwork on this was really cool too. And I have to be honest, I think I probably speak for a lot of Queen fans. I usually just skip We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions and get on with the rest of the album, because it's a great album. It's one of their more raw sounding albums. I really like the production on this. Photo of the band and some single covers mixed in with the lyrics. Next up is another, they were on such a roll at this point, 1978, Jazz. This is a Canadian Hollywood issue. Artwork on this was very, very unique. I just think this is just really cool. All around the CD perimeter there's the girls on bikes. And I always like this inlay shot here, this gatefold shot of them in their rehearsal studio, with a few single covers mixed in. And of course, the infamous bicycle race poster that came with the original vinyl. They reprinted it here in smaller form. And there's the lyrics and the photo of the band. Great, great, great album. The next one is one that when I originally bought it, it was still in one of the double CD cases, and when the slim ones came out, I replaced it. Their first live album, Live Killers, from '79. This is a US edition on Hollywood Records. This is some of the first early Queen stuff I heard live, because I've just seen little bits of footage at this point. This is a great, great album. They use the red-green effect on each of the discs, as they did with each of the sides of the record labels. And I've got a Queen vinyl episode too, if anybody wants to check that out. Actually, if you're a big Queen fan and you kind of like the style of my videos, I've got a lot of Queen episodes. They're one of my favorite bands. Cool collage of pictures here, and this is, reprinted from inside the record. And a write-up on the band. All right, next up is another one of those ones that there's an Elektra version of I'd like to find, but what I have is actually, it's not the original CD I have of this album, it's The Game from 1980. In 2011, Hollywood reissued their albums. This is before they switched over to Universal. Each one of these reissues came with a bonus EP, and I'll explain what that's about. So, disc 1 of this album is just the album proper. Disc 2 is a 5-song EP, which is very valuable because it contains the song A Human Body, which was the B-side of, I think it was the B-side of Play the Game. I actually have the single to that. It was a Roger Taylor song. It didn't make the album. And it didn't make the original Hollywood issue either, which is kind of strange. They caught some of those B-sides and some of them they didn't, but I wanted to get that song. It also has a live version of Save Me from Montreal, which I think is from the same concert that they released, that they put out in 1981 from that concert. It's got Sail Away Sweet Sister with guide vocal, which is a Brian May song. It's a Beautiful Day, dated back to April 1980, original spontaneous idea. And if you're a Queen fan, you know that song didn't surface until after Freddie passed. It was released posthumously on Made in Heaven. And a live version of Dragon Attack from Milton Keynes in '82, which I think was from Queen live at the Bowl. Both concerts I'll be talking about. So the discs flip out like that. That's the bonus EP. And the booklet is one of those stubborn booklets to come out. Try to get it out without damaging it. It's just got the photos and credits from the original album. This was Queen's single biggest selling album that wasn't a greatest hits album. And there's a cool shot of the band on stage. That's from the Montreal concert, I can tell. And there's a little write-up about each of the new songs, or each of the bonus EP songs. Next thing to show you came out in 1980 as well, the soundtrack to Flash Gordon. Not an album I listen to a lot, but the artwork is cool. I like the yellow artwork here. Canadian edition on Hollywood. Sam Jones as the titular character, Flash. Sam J. Jones, I believe. That's the disc itself. And it's just got photos from the movie and photos of the band there. Now, something interesting happened when they did the Queen reissues pertaining to the greatest hits albums. Queen's Greatest Hits originally came out in 1981. It came out in North America and I think Japan, Australia, Germany on Elektra Records, which was their label at the time in those territories. In the rest of the world, it came out at EMI. There were slightly different track listings, but they all had the same cover art. Greatest Hits 2, because Queen, their popularity in North America dipped considerably. Greatest Hits 2 was never released in North America originally, not till many, many years later when the vinyl reissue started coming out. But what did get released in its place is a compilation which I'll talk to you about. But the original Greatest Hits didn't come with the 1991 reissues from Hollywood. What they did is they put out a single disc called Classic Queen, which is coming up. And later on in 1992, they put out an album called Greatest Hits, which collected the songs that weren't on Classic Queen. I wanted the original Greatest Hits somehow, and I ended up getting it sent as an import. And I got this disc here, which this is the iconic Queen Greatest Hits album cover, which is easy to find now. But in 1992, it wasn't. It's a little bit, if you're a Kiss fan, it's a little bit like Creatures of the Night. You wanted the original makeup cover, but all you could find was the non-makeup cover. Now the non-makeup cover is the rare one. So this is the UK edition on EMI. And because I hadn't quite gotten all of the Queen CDs by the time I got this is the first time I heard Flash, or Flash's theme, as it's sometimes called. There's not much inside of this. The record's cooler to look at as far as credits, but I really wanted to have the original Greatest Hits on CD. Next up, 1982, Hot Space. I do believe that this was the last one I needed to complete my Queen CDs as far as the studio albums in 92. I think this one came last. This is a Canadian edition on Hollywood. Generally considered to be not Queen's finest, but it's Queen, and because their recording career ended, you go back and you listen to what's there. There are some gems on here. It's just very poppy, very dancey, but still the personalities come through, and there's just great music on here. Having said that, I don't reach for it a lot. Next one is one of the rarer CDs I have to show you. So again, 91, 92, the Hollywood issues were pretty much all you could find. Except if you were lucky enough to happen upon a record store that had some older stock. And I remember making this choice and not regretting it in the least. The Works is one of my favorite Queen albums. I'd heard it on vinyl and I didn't have it on CD, so I went to get it on CD. And so I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the record store that I went to had the Hollywood issue, but tucked in behind, still in its original long box, which I wish I'd kept, was this, the original US Capitol version of the Works. So Queen released 3 albums on Capitol in the States. This was the first one. This was the most successful one. This must have been old stock, and so I didn't hesitate to pick this up. So that's got the Capitol logo on it. I don't know if it's valuable, but it's rare. You don't see this copy very much. And it doesn't have any lyrics or anything. It just reprints that from the inside of the record. However, and I knew this at the time too, by doing that, the Hollywood issue contained the song I Go Crazy, which was the B-side of Radio Gaga. Another fun rock song from them. I think it's a Brian May song. So years later, again with the 2011 issues, I picked up a secondary copy of the Works because it has a bonus EP that not only contains I Go Crazy, but it also contains Thank God It's Christmas, their Christmas tune they released around the same time. This is actually an Argentina issue of it, but it goes with the Universal reissues too. So this is one of the newer ones that I have. It's got the Queen website on the bottom. Disc itself and the EP. That looks pretty much the same. And they reprint the lyrics. And again, like the game, there is a write-up of the songs that appeared on the bonus EP. So I've got both. Next one is another really rare CD. I would say it's more rare than The Works because The Works was a more successful album. It's Kind of Magic, 1986, and this is a US Capitol version of it. I did have the Hollywood Records version of it, and I think I gave it to Matt. Didn't really have anything bonus on it that I wasn't getting here. There were no extra songs, like actual songs, even though there are other songs that they did around this time that would be on the bonus EP if I bought that version of it, but this is very rare. CD extra tracks packs. That's something that Capitol was doing at that time. My Sammy Hagar rematch CD, which came out in '87, has the same thing on it. This is extremely rare. I don't know if it goes for much money. I haven't looked because I have it, but you don't see it very much. It doesn't have the lyrics though, but I do have the record, so it's got the lyrics in there. Another album that I've talked about many times on my various Queen episodes is their second live album, which came out in '86, called Live Magic. It was never released in the States originally. The first time it appeared on CD, readily available, was in '96, and took me by surprise because I didn't know it was coming out, because I had it on record at the time. That was the only thing I had it on. So Queen Live Magic, documenting their final tour that they did with Freddie. This is a US Hollywood Records version. They finally put it out. Good stuff. There's the CD itself. And just lots of cool live shots. Their Queen helicopter, all of those people at Wembley. Good stuff. Good document of that last tour. So the next Queen studio album came out in 1989. This was the final one they did for Capitol in the States. And you can get the Capitol CD version of this quite readily available because it was the newest one. I've got the Hollywood version of The Miracle. This is a Canadian edition. As far as bonus songs, it's got Hang On in there, which was the B-side of I Want It All. And it's got a couple 12-inch mixes, which are kind of pointless if you ask me. The CD itself. So when the Hollywood issues came out, this was only a couple years old. And it's pretty much faithful to the original credits, the way everything was laid out. Also, never released in North America in its original state, I think until the mid-90s. But because it was Queen, I had to have it. It came out in 1989, but of course it's much earlier than that, is Queen at the Beeb, as in the BBC. This is a UK CD on Band of Joy Records, which I'm guessing they put out kind of like the King Biscuit Flower Hour series. They put out these BBC recordings. And I happened to come across this again. I think this was an import that somebody brought in but didn't pick up. It was in Fredericton that I bought it. And this has 8 songs on it, 7 of which are from the first album. 1, Ogre Battle, is from the second album. And it was just something different to have at a time when I thought I had all the Queen CDs. A little write-up from Malcolm Dome, who's a well-known British rock writer. 1991, Innuendo, the final album to come out while Freddie was alive. This is a Canadian edition on Hollywood Records. So it's not a reissue. This was the first album they actually did for Hollywood Records. CD's just really cool, clean looking. And it's got some unique artwork throughout here and the lyrics. So I talked about the Greatest Hits album. So what I'm about to show you here is a UK version of Greatest Hits 2, which came out in late 91. I think just before Freddie passed away. It came out in October, I think. And if this album cover looks familiar to a lot of you, there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that. So this is the Queen Greatest Hits 2 on EMI. 17 songs, even the way the songs are written there might look familiar to you, and the disc itself. And what I like about these issues here is that each song gets its own write-up, photo of the single cover, and some info about where it charted in various parts of the world. Really, really well done. So this did not come out with the Hollywood issues in North America. In the spring of 1992, they were quite smart when they did this. And I don't know how far back the marketing went, but this emerged. You started to see this, Classic Queen. This is a compilation, and it's, for the most part, it's pretty much Greatest Hits Volume 2. But it does have a few exceptions. Most notably, they stuck Bohemian Rhapsody on here because it was in Wayne's World, and that was a brilliant, brilliant move. I think this album sold 2-3 billion copies in the States, and it did really, really well in Canada. It was #1 album. A lot of people picked up this album as their first Queen purchase. I think it was my second. I looked at it and I thought, okay, it's got I Want It All on here. That was enough for me because I always liked that song even before I got into the band. This is a Canadian edition on Hollywood, and it follows the same format, the same artwork as Greatest Hits 2. Yeah, for a while this was quite popular, and the Greatest Hits album that Hollywood put out looks like this, except it's got a burgundy cover. And this, again, like the Greatest Hits 2, has got write-ups about each song. But here, okay, it's got single covers of each song. Notably, with one exception, Stone Cold Crazy. They used the Sheer Heart Attack album. That was never a single. But Hollywood, these guys were smart. They knew a lot of people would buy it because Metallica had recently covered Stone Cold Crazy, and they were at their zenith at the time. The Black Album was popular at the time. Not that they were never not popular, but it was just another incentive for somebody to pick this up. So later in 1992, Hollywood puts this CD out, Queen Live at Wembley '86. This is sort of an expanded version of Live Magic. This originally too came in a thick CD case, a double one, which I switched. This is a US copy, and this is documenting, of course, their final shows. Discs are colored like so. A little write-up, some photos, and next to each member is their counterpart from the animated A Kind of Magic album cover. Next thing to come out was the album that was we knew was going to come out after Freddie passed away. It came out in late '95, Made in Heaven. This contains songs that they had been working on. This also contains some reworked versions of solo songs each of the band members had, and they put it together and made it a Queen album. This is a Canadian edition, and it's by this time Hollywood Records had switched their distribution to Polygram. As a matter of fact, you see above the Hollywood logo there's an A&M logo, which Polygram had bought. Now it's all Universal. This isn't an album I listened to all that much, but it was I had to have it. It was very cool to have. It's got the statue of Freddie on one side and the surviving band members on the other. And it's very cool. There's a photo of each band member with Freddie. And it's a nice tribute. I've never understood the 20 minutes of sound effects they put on at the end of this, but there are some good songs on here. Any Queen is worth checking out. Next thing I have, like so many compilations have come out since, you know, that time. I don't have all of them. I do have a fair bit of CDs left to talk to you about, though. One of my favorites came out in 1997. It's Queen Rocks. It combines some, but not all, of their heavier songs into one place. And this is a UK edition on EMI, specifically Parlophone, which is EMI. And there's one new song on here called No One But You, which was a tribute to Freddie. CD itself, and it's simply got the lyrics to all of the songs on here. So yeah, it's got a lot of their heavier songs in one place. If you're trying to get someone who's more of a metalhead into Queen, this would be a good place to start, but it doesn't have everything on it. Next up is actually a tribute CD. Now in 1997-98, a ton of these tribute CDs came out with the 70s and 80s hard rock guys. A lot of times it's the same bunch of them on every one of them, and I've had more over the years. Some I've kept. The AC/DC Thunderbolt one is really good. The Ace Frehley one is pretty good, and this one is pretty good. It's called Dragon Attack, a tribute to Queen. It is on D-Rock Records, which is now a defunct label, a Canadian label actually, and it's just simply what it says. It's a bunch of different musicians together playing on Queen songs, and so this features people like James LaBrie from Dream Theater, Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer, Rudy Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge, John Petrucci. There's all kinds of different people that appear on these albums. So, you know, it's not going to make you forget the original versions, but it's decent. It's worth picking up if you're adventurous. Really, it's good to pick up at least one Queen tribute CD so you find out how utterly original they were and how you can't really duplicate them at all. You can play the right notes and play the right chords, but it's not the same thing. Next thing came out in 1999, a curious little release, I'll call it. Greatest Hits 3 by Queen Plus. Why Queen Plus? Well, there's a reason for that. This is a UK edition on Parlophone EMI. It came out on Hollywood as well. This is sort of, I don't want to say odds and sods, but it is. It's they were trying to, you know, get as much as they could out of the catalog. This puts together songs that were singles that were never on any of the compilations before, combining them with songs that had come out since. Like there's songs from Made in Heaven on here, obviously, that wouldn't have been on any others. There are guest appearances. For instance, this has Queen with George Michael doing Somebody to Love from the Concert for Life, which actually became a top 40 single. That's on here. It's got Elton John doing The Show Must Go On with the surviving members of Queen. It's got solo hits by them, like it's got Driven by You by Brian May. It's got Freddie Mercury Living on My Own, The Great Pretender. It's got Princess of the Universe, which was a single and video from A Kind of Magic, but never appeared on a compilation before. And it goes all the way back to 1982 with La Palabras de Amor from Hot Space. It's got Thank God It's Christmas on here again. You know, it's not essential, but, you know, it's Greatest Hits 3 by Queen Plus. I don't know what more else to say about it. Now, basically, it's compilations. 2004, they put out their concert they'd filmed in 1982 at Milton Keynes, Live at the Bowl. This is off the Hot Space tour, and the band sounds really, really good on this. I have this on DVD as well. Hot Space was not well received, but this particular live album sounds really, really good. This was when ringtones were starting to be a thing when this came out. This is a UK version too on EMI. Shots of the band on stage. Not really any write-up in here, but this is a concert that Queen fans knew existed and was filmed. So it's the first time it was made readily available. So another best of came out in 2009. It's just simply called Absolute Greatest. This is on Hollywood Records again, but it was distributed by Universal. I think I bought this because it was at the cash register at, I don't know if it was Sunrise at this point or if it was still HMV, but the price was right, so I picked it up. Nothing different on here, just a good single disc compilation. And of course, using that iconic Greatest Hits shot too. Then some cool archival stuff started coming out, and it started coming out one year after another for a while. In 2014, they put this out, Queen Live at the Rainbow 74. This is capturing very, very early Queen. And this was one of my, I think, earliest reviews. I think it's one of my earliest episodes when I talked about when this came out. So I won't go into a great amount of detail about it, but I've got it on DVD as well. It's just prime, you know. They hadn't quite hit the worldwide stardom that they were going to have, but you could tell they were heading there. They were just so great. And this, of course, contains a lot of songs that you wouldn't hear live in concert from the first 3 albums, eventually. Another Queen compilation came out in 2014. This one had some hype behind it, Queen Forever. This is basically love songs and slower songs, but what the draw behind buying this was the first 3 tracks that were previously not heard before. Let Me In Your Heart Again, Love Kills, which was a Freddie Mercury solo song that he had from the Metropolis soundtrack in 83 or 84. There's a ballad version of this, and an unearthed duet with Michael Jackson called There Must Be More to Life Than This. And apparently there were other collaborations between Queen and Michael Jackson as well. This is the one they decided to put out. Another classic concert came out in 2015, A Night at the Odeon. This was done on Christmas Eve, 1975. I did a review episode of this one as well, and I have it on DVD. Very, very good. In 2016, they put out an expanded version of what I showed you as Live at the Beeb. This is Queen on Air. This is a Canadian edition on Hollywood. It's also in collaboration with the BBC, because this has all of their BBC sessions that they did, ranging from February 73 to finally October 77. This got some cool stuff on here. I didn't do a review episode of this for some reason. There's more expansive editions of this. I've just got the standard one, which is fine with me. And it's got information about each session and the songs they do. I mean, the BBC is very important, because I wasn't there at the time, obviously. I've never been there. But in the 70s, in the UK, BBC, Top the Pops, it was the only way you could hear rock music. So this is worth picking up if you're into early Queen. And then finally, another one I've talked about in depth, the soundtrack to Bohemian Rhapsody. This is just a Canadian edition, and it's awesome. You can check out my review of that when we actually went to see the movie. So there you go. I'm sure I'm missing some compilations that some would consider essential. What have you got for cool Queen CDs? And back when I asked about the A Day at the Races CD, I'd like to see that. And if any of you out there have any of the old Elektra CDs, I'd love to see them. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.